Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban is due to meet Germany's AfD party leader Alice Weidel in Budapest this morning. Weidel's far-right party shares Orban's desire to rebuild Europe's relations with Russia despite the ongoing Ukraine war, as well as his strong anti-immigration stance. The meeting comes less than 2 weeks before a parliamentary election in Germany, in which the AfD is expected to come a strong second. Earlier, we spoke to our East and Central Europe correspondent Nick Thorpe, who's in Budapest. He told us why he thinks these leaders are meeting now.
This change in Orban's policy, I think there are three reasons for it. On the one hand, he's a very pragmatic politician. In the past, he's not wanted to deal with parties, in this case, the Alternative for Germany, which didn't seem to stand much chance of coming to power. Now they're on 20%, 2 weeks, as you say, before the German election, and they're starting to look more electable in some kind of coalition, although there are problems with that, of course. The other reason, of course, is Donald Trump's victory in the United States. Elon Musk has welcomed Alice Weidel into the sort of democratic circle. He's endorsed the AfD very strongly, and Mr. Orban, really as a friend of Trump, is helping break down that firewall in European politics between right-wing parties and the far right. So in a way, Mr. Orban is helping Alice Weidel to sort of come in from the cold there, although she is still out to some extent in the cold for many Germans at least.
Nick Thorpe there. Well, earlier I spoke to resident senior fellow and deputy director for international studies at think tank Institute Montaigne, Georgina Wright. She told us what Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban and Germany's AfD party leader Alice Weidel have in common.
You know, they're both far-right parties led by sort of nationalist, populist figures. And I think what's really important, your correspondent just said that before, is to really show a united front. I mean, you've got far-right parties that are doing really well electorally across Europe. But the main criticism has been that they don't really work together. And so they haven't actually managed to make Europe great again. So I think this is an attempt to say, you know, we don't sit in the same European party in the European Parliament, but we can actually work together and across parties.
And what's your analysis of how successful the AfD may be in the upcoming Germany elections? The polls put them running as possibly coming second.
It's too early to say, and it's often the case with the German elections, so we really will have to wait and see. But what's absolutely clear is they're doing much better than they were certainly at the last election, and you know, 10 years ago they really were a fringe party. So they are asserting much more power, and you're seeing even in the German debate, you know, sort of debates about, do we have to start learning to work with them in the parliament or not? You know, until very recently there was a cordon sanitaire, meaning there was absolutely no working with them, and that might change, but all depends really on the election and the result that will come out of it.
Many people might be shocked that, given Germany's far-right Nazi past, that a far-right party is doing so well. What is their success down to?
I mean, several things. The first, I think President Trump's re-election has certainly given wings to many of these parties. And, you know, we were hearing earlier, Elon Musk direct support for AfD. But there are a number of people across Europe who feel that the centrist parties simply aren't delivering for them anymore. And you have a party, a far-right party, the Alternative for Deutschland, that's talking about immigration, taking control of our borders, but also, you know, making sure that we are spending money, German money on Germany, on those that need it. And so with inflation, with you know, the cost of living crisis, that message is really cutting through. So the question is really what the other parties are able to put forward. There's been deep disillusion with the current government, the current coalition that's been seen as dysfunctional. We'll have to really wait and see who comes out first, and then what coalition might be possible. So we might see several months of negotiation before we have a well-functioning German government.
In January, a firewall was breached that has been in place since the Second World War, when the AfD lent their support to legislation. That's been criticised by former Chancellor Angela Merkel and by the Chancellor Scholz as well. Has that dented the AfD's support at all?
I think on the contrary, it's made it more popular to a certain extent because people think, well, actually, other parties are willing to work with it. So that means that it surely it's not as radical as people might say. But I have to say, in Germany, there is still a majority of people who think that this party is dangerous, that haven't forgotten, of course, what happened during the Second World War. So again, we really have to wait and see until the election to kind of determine how far they have, how well they've done and how far they've spread their support across Germany. And we really need to wait and see. But I think this is also a reckoning point for the centrist parties who think if we are losing support, what are we doing wrong and how can we change that?